Hello and welcome back to Hot Take here on No Bullshit, where we review the latest movies and give you our hot take on them. Today's topic is Halloween from 2018. This new movie came out last week and it's the 11th entry in the Halloween franchise, and the third movie to be sharing the simple Halloween name. And this time, funny enough, the original killer Michael Myers is returning to Haddonfield, Illinois to wreak havoc once again. Not the most original premise of all time, but does this movie hold up nonetheless? And will it be able to deliver at the box office based on its story alone? We're going to find out today, here on Hot Take. In short, resoundingly yes, Halloween 2018 is a really fun movie, a great horror film, and a wonderful entry in this franchise. I had a lot of fun with this movie, some good scares, some good laughs, and a nice interesting story too, brought up by a very good cast as well. All around, good movie, great impressions right off the bat, so I'm going to tell you why here. First of all, I'm a longtime fan of this series, and I haven't liked all the movies or anything at all, not even close. I was not a big fan of the last two Rob Zombie movies. They kind of went too serious and too much backstory for me. I prefer the classic Halloween movies, and that's what this Halloween 2018 brings you. A classic Halloween tale with some good modern twist to it as well. This year's Halloween movie is a fresh take on a classic slasher movie genre. So right from the beginning, I do have to warn some people, if you don't like horror, if you don't like movies with killings and scary stuff in it, you might not be a fan of this movie. It's definitely not for kids and not for the faint of heart as well. But if you are a fan, if you like horror, if you like things like Mike Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, scary stuff like that, you're gonna like this like I did. The story worked, the kills were great, and the camera work and cinematography was really good too. All brought together by a good cast, including some returning people like Jamie Lee Curtis, the lead character, and Michael Myers, of course. I'm not sure if he's played by the same person, but he's in the mask, he's the scary villain, and he's back, scarier than ever. That brings me to the story summary for this movie. The story summary for Halloween 2018 basically goes like this. We return to Haddonfield, Illinois, the original town from the original movie, that original story that happened 40 years ago. And in this movie, 40 years have also passed in the story, and now we're back in the present, and we see Jamie Lee Curtis has gotten old. She was the main girl in the original movie. She was running from Mike Myers and she survived at the end. And now 40 years later, she's old and she has a kid and a grandkid now. And it turns out this whole situation when she was a teen with Mike Myers, it changed her whole life. She spent her whole life training, preparing for him to come back possibly, or preparing to maybe try and kill him as well. It's kind of ambiguous at the beginning, but essentially Jamie Lee Curtis has turned into a badass. She has guns everywhere. She's living in this house out in the middle of nowhere with like a bunch of booby traps on it. She really reminds me of like going hardcore, kind of like Sarah Connor in the movie Terminator. Very similar to that, like where the original movie she's just like a girl in distress, and then by the second movie she goes hardcore. She's like working out. She learns how to do guns. She learns how to do traps, and on top of that, in this movie, in Halloween, Jamie Lee Curtis has been keeping tabs on Mike Myers. He's not dead. He was captured and put into an insane asylum where we see him at the beginning of the movie, but surprise, surprise, you could probably guess this from the kind of movie it is and from the trailer, but eventually Mike Myers breaks out. They're transferring him to another psychiatric ward, psychiatric prison, and he breaks out. That's when he starts heading towards Haddonfield and heading towards Jamie Lee Curtis and her family. It's actually not quite clear where he's going for. I think a lot of people think he just goes back to his hometown. That part's left a little ambiguous. You might have to guess, but eventually he does come across Jamie Lee Curtis. Her character's named Laurie Strode. Yeah, she goes after him, and then you can kind of take it from there. I'm not going to spoil the whole movie, but that's the basic setup. And what I really liked about the presentation was there was a good sense of humor to it. It wasn't too over the top or like a parody of horror movies, but there were definitely some hints, some kind of like little winks at the audience, and some things that happened. I mean, there were tropes in this movie for sure. There were like people that were very curious and like looking around, trying to find stuff when they should just be getting the hell out of there. A lot of stuff like that happened like in typical horror movies, but that didn't ruin it for me. I actually kind of liked it. Like they kind of presented it where a lot of the people were dumb. A lot of the people were asking for it, so they got their comeuppance. Excellent camera work in this movie too. There's some really cool dark scenes. It's a very dark movie, you know, set at night, and then there's some good natural light they bring in with like lights from the cop cars. The red and blue lights come in, flashlights, stuff like that are used, and then there's also some really good camera shots. There's like a really good long take in the middle of the movie where you follow Mike around through like two different houses and the camera's going all along with him, and it's not point of view like the traditional classic original movie had a point of view shot, but it was following him and then it went around on, and it was really cool. Like, they did a lot of good stuff like that, a lot of good shots and a lot of good setups and locations. That brings me to Jamie Lee Curtis. Like I was saying, she has this house in the woods where she has all these booby traps on it, and that was like a really good set, really well built, looked scary. The other thing I liked about this movie was they kind of skipped over all the sequels. So this is the 11th Halloween movie, right? And they skipped over everything in between, and basically this is a sequel from the first movie. So you got to kind of know what happens in the first movie, but that's pretty easy. They recap stuff at the beginning of this movie, so they kind of skip over that. That's what makes the title a little confusing, but once you figure that out, it's a sequel. It skips over all the other sequels, and then you could really have some fun. And then you could also recognize that this movie is a fine entry point to the series. Like, you don't need to see any other Halloween movies. Maybe knowing a little bit about Michael Myers would help. Most people already do just from hearing it on TV or whatnot, but this movie can be a starter movie if you're interested in the series. All the cast is good. There's a good supporting cast. Jamie Lee Curtis shines, and then there's also her daughter, played by Judy Greer, and then the granddaughter, which is like the high school kid. There's a few high school kids that also do really well. A couple of them are funny, a couple of them are cute, and they all have good personalities, and you don't want to see them die, but eventually, of course, a lot of them do. With all that said, let's go ahead and bring out the hot take meter. I'll easily give Halloween 2018 4 out of 5 flames. That's right, a very high score for a very high caliber movie. Now, you gotta like horror movies, you gotta like scary stuff and seeing those kills and being suspenseful and all that, but if you're a fan like I am, if you like Halloween, this movie's for you. It's a good job, it's a perfect timing, it's right before the real Halloween in the real world, the actual holiday, so if you're thinking about going to see it, I would recommend it. All in all, great job, and I'm really stoked, and I want to congratulate Danny McBride. He's one of my favorite actors, one of my favorite writers and comedians out there today, and he had a part in this movie. He was part working on the story, and he's good friends with the director, David Gordon Green, and I think these guys did an excellent job, and I hope they make another one. I hear they're thinking about doing a sequel already, so that should happen, and that's going to be very cool. Thanks for watching today's episode of Hot Take, everyone. We'll see you next week to talk about the latest Hollywood movie.